There's a silence heavier than failure. It doesn't shout or collapse, it just sits there. It arrives quietly when your alarm goes off and you feel like you've already lost. It lingers in your body like fog. You write another to-do list you know you won't touch. You scroll for hours, half aware, half numb. And then the voice returns, "You're lazy." But what if that's not the truth? What if you're not lazy at all? What if what you're calling laziness is actually grief wearing the mask of stillness? Not the kind of grief we know how to name. Not the kind that comes with funerals or flowers. This is quiet grief, hidden grief. The grief of a dream that didn't survive. The grief of an identity you no longer recognize. The grief of showing up again and again in a life that doesn't reflect who you were supposed to become. We're told to push through it, to hustle, to get over it. But your nervous system doesn't speak in deadlines. It speaks in withdrawal, in hesitation, in the slow fading of desire. And so you stall, not because you don't care, but because something inside you is still mourning something unspoken. And this is where people go wrong. They confuse that mourning for laziness, and then they punish themselves for it. You beat yourself down for not doing what your body can't yet bear. And all that does is drive the stuckness deeper. In Inuit mythology, there is a goddess named Sedna who once trusted those closest to her and was betrayed. Thrown into the icy sea by her own father, she sank to the ocean floor, where she became the spirit who controls all marine life. But when people forget to honor her, she tangles the creatures in her long black hair, causing famine. The shaman must then dive into the deep, find her, and gently comb out the knots to restore the flow of life again. That's what this is. You are Sedna. Your potential, your energy, your joy, it's all still there. But it's tangled in unprocessed pain. And no amount of guilt will unbind it. You don't need to push through. You need to descend, to sit with yourself. To stop running from the thing you haven't faced. Not to fix it, but to listen. To gently untangle the knots. Because your energy isn't gone, it's withheld. Waiting to return when it feels safe to do so. You are not behind, you are not broken, you are not lazy. You're overdue for a reckoning with the part of you that got left behind. And until that reunion happens, life will keep sending you signals, disguised as fatigue, distraction, avoidance. This isn't about laziness. This is about grief with nowhere to go. And once you give it a name, it starts to move. And when it moves, so do you. You want to change. You think about it every day. You feel it in your chest, that frustration, that longing. You imagine starting again. You picture the new routine, the clean slate, and then nothing happens. You don't move. And that's where the guilt begins. Why can't I just do it? But this isn't a question of willpower. It's a civil war inside your mind. On one side is your prefrontal cortex, rational, future-focused, the voice that says, let's go. On the other is your limbic system, ancient, emotional, the voice that says, let's stay safe. And the moment you try to start, write that sentence, open that application, make that call, the limbic system screams, too hard, too risky, what if we fail again? And just like that, you freeze, not because you're lazy, because your brain has been wired by pain to avoid any future that even resembles it. There's a name for this, the trauma of repetition. Not trauma from violence or disaster, but from quiet disillusionment, from trying hard and seeing nothing change, from getting hurt just for hoping. And now, every time you want to try again, your mind pulls the emergency brake. You think it's procrastination, but it's actually protection. You're not fighting yourself. You're fighting the echo of every time trying didn't work. There's a parable from Kafka. A man stands at a gate meant just for him. He waits for permission to enter his own truth. Days pass, then years. He never steps forward. And when he dies, the gate closes because it was always waiting for him to walk through. That's what stuckness is. A gate that only opens when you stop asking for permission. The world trains you to wait. For readiness, for motivation, for clarity. But none of those are coming. Not at once, not in a perfect package. And until you realize that, you'll keep sitting at the edge of your own life, hoping the fear goes away. But fear doesn't disappear. It's displaced by motion. Not a leap, a step. Not an overhaul, a choice. One breath, one click, one truth spoken louder than your hesitation. So stop trying to fight the fear, speak to it. Say, I hear you, but I choose to move anyway. You'll still shake. Your voice may still tremble. But each time you move, you redraw the map inside your nervous system. You train your brain to see that action doesn't mean death, that failure isn't fatal. That effort doesn't have to hurt. Carl Jung once said, we cannot change anything until we accept it. Condemnation does not liberate, it oppresses. Stop condemning your freeze. Accept it, understand it, and then outgrow it, one small act at a time. And here's the paradox that will save you. You don't wait until you're ready to move. You move, and that's what makes you ready. Not every pause is failure. Not every stillness is weakness. Some silences are sacred. Some stuckness isn't meant to be broken through, but listened to. But in a world that idolizes momentum, that tells you if you're not building, you're falling behind. Stillness feels like guilt. You look at your calendar, your screen, your untouched plans, and the voice returns, you're wasting time. But what if you're not? What if stillness is not a breakdown, but a bridge? What if the space you're in now isn't a sign of laziness, but a rite of passage? Carl Jung, the Swiss psychologist who explored the soul's unfolding, spoke of the descent, a necessary inward turning where the psyche gathers strength, integrates shadow, and prepares for transformation. It's not the heroic rise that gets celebrated. It's the sacred burn no one sees. Not all progress looks like motion. Sometimes it looks like fog, it feels like slowness, it sounds like silence. But underneath, tectonic shifts are unfolding. Something old is breaking open, something essential is rearranging. Seeds don't sprout in the light. They split open in the dark. Taoism calls it wu wei, non-forcing. The art of moving with the current, not against it. Letting action arise from alignment, not anxiety. Letting purpose emerge from peace. You're not stuck because you failed. You might be stuck because you're trying to force what was never yours, or because you're still chasing a version of success your soul has outgrown. There's an old Zen koan, why is it that a man of great strength cannot lift his own legs? The answer isn't in his muscles, it's in his meaning. When movement isn't true, even giants cannot move. So this moment, this stillness, what if it's not punishment? What if it's permission? The pause says, let go of what no longer fits. It says, you've performed long enough, come home to yourself. It says, the work you're resisting isn't wrong. It's just not right for who you're becoming. And yes, it can feel like the energy is gone. But maybe it's not gone at all. Maybe it's just tangled. Like Sedna, still at the bottom of the sea, her hair in knots, holding back the life you're waiting for. And maybe this pause is your invitation to descend again, to gently comb through what you've neglected, to meet your own forgotten depths without judgment or rush. Because when you stop resisting the stillness, when you let it speak, you begin to move again, not as you were, but as who you are now. Stillness isn't your ending, it's your initiation. You've been told to wait for motivation, for the mood, the moment, the perfect alignment of energy and desire. But what if it never comes? What if waiting to feel ready is the very reason you never move? Mel Robbins said it with clarity, motivation is garbage. Because motivation doesn't come first, action does. And when you act, even imperfectly, the energy follows. Your brain was built to survive, not to evolve. It resists risk. It clings to familiarity. So the moment you think of stepping outside the known, your mind floods with reasons not to. You think you need confidence. You don't. You need a spark, one movement. One act that breaks inertia and reminds you that you are not your fear. William James called it decisive initiative, the moment a thought becomes a reality. Not because it was planned, but because it was done. You don't need to overhaul your life. You need to make it real. One drawer cleared, one breath taken outside. One small refusal to obey the voice that says, stay still. There's a story of a woman who hadn't painted in 30 years. Her brushes were dry, her spirit dimmed. One day she filled a cup with water and dipped her brush, just water. No color, no pressure, just motion. That night she dreamed in color for the first time in years, because something shifted. Movement, even when symbolic, even when quiet, speaks a language deeper than logic. It bypasses the inner critic, it cuts through paralysis. It reminds the soul that it still lives. And that's the difference between waiting and rising. You don't need a plan. You don't need certainty. You need a spark. One spark that says, I may not feel ready, but I'm moving anyway. One spark that whispers, this moment matters more than the doubt that surrounds it. One spark that tells your nervous system, we're not frozen anymore. Because once you move, your identity begins to shift. And not because you accomplished something great, but because you stopped abandoning yourself. So here's your invitation. Forget the leap, just light the match. Let today be the first breath of the fire you thought had gone out. And if you're still hesitating, ask yourself this: what's the smallest step I could take right now before fear finishes its sentence? Then take it. You are not beginning from scratch. You are returning to a path that remembers you, one you quietly left, not out of failure, but out of survival. It wasn't your fault. You were pulled away, pulled into noise, into proving, into becoming who others needed you to be. And in the process, you didn't lose your spark. You left it, you put it down gently, maybe even with love, because there just wasn't room for it in the life you were building. But now the ache is back. The ache that whispers, this isn't it. That ache isn't confusion, it's direction. Rumi once wrote, let yourself be silently drawn by the strange pull of what you really love. It will not lead you astray. But the world taught you to push instead of follow. It taught you to measure instead of feel. And it taught you that what you loved wasn't serious enough to count. But what if the thing that once lit you up before the deadlines, before the detours, isn't dead? What if it's waiting? In the old Celtic myths, there are stories of the Selkie, a seal who sheds her skin to walk the earth as a woman. She lives among humans, marries, bears children. But if someone hides her seal skin, she forgets who she was. She forgets the sea. She forgets the wild. Until one day she finds it again and remembers. She slips it on and returns home, not because she didn't love the life she built, but because she could no longer live away from her truth. You are not lazy. You are a Selkie with her skin missing. That grief you feel, it's the longing for what once made you feel whole, the joy you lost. It wasn't trivial, it was truth. And no, the return doesn't have to be dramatic. In fact, it usually isn't. It's opening the notebook you stopped writing in. It's humming the song you buried in your throat. It's walking a familiar trail and remembering who you were before you got so tired. These are not hobbies. They are resurrection points. As Clarissa Pinkola Estes said, ours is not the task of fixing the entire world all at once, but of stretching out to mend the part of the world that is within our reach. And the part within reach right now is you. So mend what was shelved. Reclaim what was once yours. Not to chase the past, but to return to the source of your fire. Because you don't have to reinvent yourself. You only have to go back for what you were forced to leave behind, even if it's buried, even if it's dusty, even if it's small. That small thing might just be the key to everything. This is it, not the end, not the beginning. The ignition. This is the moment you stop asking for permission to return to your own life. You've wandered long enough, you've doubted long enough. You've waited for clarity, for courage, for proof. But the proof never comes before the step, it comes after. You keep thinking it needs to feel epic to count. But sometimes resurrection sounds like breathing. Sometimes awakening looks like walking out the door, even though the fear is still talking. You don't need to feel ready. You need to move before the fear rewrites the script again. Viktor Frankl said, "Life is never made unbearable by circumstances, but only by lack of meaning and purpose. And meaning doesn't arrive wrapped in thunder. It shows up when you act, when you do something that reminds your soul, we are still alive. You are not broken, you're not late. You are a fire that forgot how to catch. But it's still there in the ash, in the ember. In the part of you that always knew this wasn't the end. Remember Sedna, the goddess at the bottom of the sea, tangled in the silence of neglect. When the shaman dives down and combs her hair, the sea begins to breathe again. You've been tangled in silence. But this is you combing your own knots. This is you choosing to rise, not with a roar, but with a sacred whisper that says, I remember who I am. So don't wait for motivation. Don't wait for the perfect plan. Don't wait to stop shaking. Take the step now. While the fear still talks, while the doubt still lingers, take it not because you're fearless, but because you're done being silent. Speak it, write it, move toward it. Even if it's just one breath in the right direction, and if you felt seen, if something inside you stirred, then don't let it fade. Let this be the line in the sand. The moment where you didn't just watch another video and say, that was beautiful. The moment you did something. So ask yourself now, what's one small, sacred step I can take today to honor the life I'm meant to live? Then do it. And mark it out loud. Drop it in the comments. Not for me, for you. As proof that the fire was never gone. It was just waiting for you to remember how to spark it. You are not stuck, you are awakening, and it begins now.